In 1962, a man in Pike County, Kentucky, was fined $100 for serving his own cured ham at his daughter's wedding. The ham had hung in his smokehouse for 18 months. His grandfather built that smokehouse in 1893. The county health inspector said it did not meet code. Hillbilly food hacks that fed mountain communities for 2 centuries are not just forgotten. Most are now technically illegal in most states. Number 14 on this list will get you a federal charge today. Number 7 was banned by the FDA in 1976 over a single disputed rat study. And number 3 states wrote laws specifically to stop people from doing it in their own backyards. Hit that subscribe button because what your great-grandfather did without a second thought is now considered a crime. Let's count down the 25 hillbilly food hacks that quietly vanished from American kitchens for legal reasons. Walk into any cabin in the Blue Ridge before 1970 and you would find a cupboard of brown and cream stoneware crocks, jugs, and bean pots that had been in the family for generations. The glaze that gave that pottery its signature warm shine was lead. Mountain potters had used lead glaze since the 1700s because it melted at lower temperatures, sealed the clay against moisture, and looked beautiful by lamplight. Grandma cooked pinto beans in those crocks. She fermented kraut in them. She stored buttermilk for a week without a single drop spoiling. The acidic food slowly leached lead into every meal. Nobody knew. The CDC did not issue 159 formal warnings against vintage lead-glazed cookware until 1971, and most state health codes followed by 1978. Today, selling food prepared in unlined antique pottery is a violation of federal food safety law in all 50 states. Antique dealers are required to label these pieces as for decorative use only. A 70-year-old crock that fed for generations is now a federal liability. Number 24. Sundrying apples on the tin roof. Every September from West Virginia to North Georgia, ladders leaned against farmhouses and bed sheets spread across hot tin roofs covered in sliced apples. Mountain women called the practice putting up snits. The apples sat in the sun for 3 to 5 days, turning leathery and concentrated, then went into cloth sacks hung in the rafters for wind pies and stack cakes. The tin roof acted like a low oven, gently dehydrating the fruit at 120 through the long Appalachian afternoons. A bushel of apples that cost 40 cents in 1955 produced enough dried fruit for an entire winter. Today, this method is illegal for any commercial sale in 47 states because United States Department of Agriculture dehydration standards require temperature-controlled equipment with documented kill steps for surface bacteria. A church bake sale in Tennessee was shut down in 2019 for selling stack cake made with roof-dried apples. The cake had been made the same way for 140 years. Number 23. The Spring House. Before electricity reached the haulers in the 1940s, every mountain homestead had a spring house. A small stone building straddling a cold creek where milk crocks, butter, and meat sat in the running water at a steady 50 to year-round. It was a refrigerator that needed no power, no maintenance, and worked perfectly for 150 years. A widow in Letcher County, Kentucky, kept her family fed through 3 winters in the 1930s using nothing but her spring house and her root cellar. Today, the FDA Food Code requires any dairy products sold commercially to be stored at 41 or below with continuous electronic temperature monitoring. Spring water itself is classified as a potential biological hazard under most state retail food regulations. A small dairy in Virginia tried to revive Springhouse-aged cheese in 2014 and was forced to install a refrigeration system costing $30,000 before they could sell a single wheel. Number 22. Wood Ash Harmony. This is the one that hurts to lose. Real hominy, the kind that built the entire diet of Appalachia and the rural South, was made by soaking dried corn in water mixed with sifted hardwood ash. The lye in the ash dissolved the corn's tough outer hull, swelled each kernel into a pearl twice its original size, and unlocked niacin in the corn that is otherwise chemically locked. This single technique prevented pellagra in mountain families for 3 centuries. A grandmother in Madison County, North Carolina could turn a bushel of feed corn into 30 pounds of hominy in a single afternoon using only ash from her wood stove. Modern food code requires hominy to be made with food-grade calcium hydroxide from a certified supplier. Selling hardwood ash hominy is illegal in every state because the alkalinity is not standardized. The science is identical. The result is identical. The paperwork does not exist. Every October in towns from Barkley Springs to Boone, families dragged out the copper kettle, set it over a hardwood fire in the yard, and stirred apple butter for 14 hours straight. The wooden paddle had a long handle so you did not burn your hands. Whole families took shifts. The apple butter that came out of those kettles, dark as molasses and smelling of cinnamon and wood smoke, was sold at every county fair from 1850 to 1985. Then state agriculture departments started enforcing the food code. Open fire cooking is a violation of food handler regulations in 43 states because the temperature cannot be verified. The cooking surface is not sanitized between batches and ash contamination cannot be controlled. Several towns tried to grandfather their festivals in most lost. The Barkley Springs Apple Butter Festival now uses propane burners and stainless steel kettles. The flavor changed. The old-timers can taste the difference. They just cannot legally sell what they used to. A whole ham hung in a mountain smokehouse for 18 months would lose 40% of its weight, develop a hard mahogany rind, and grow a layer of beneficial mold that locals called the bloom. That ham was the centerpiece of every Christmas table from Smith County to Sevier County for 200 years. A man in 1955 could buy a fresh ham for $90, salt cured in his own smokehouse for $1 worth of salt and brown sugar, and end up with a finished ham worth $15 at retail. The economics built mountain communities. Today, United States Department of Agriculture inspection is required for any cured ham sold across state or county lines. And most states require a licensed 8 to 36 processing facility with documented pH and water activity testing. 840 to the traditional ambient aged country ham, the kind your great-grandfather hung from a rafter, cannot legally be 850 sold in most states. Genuine Tennessee and Virginia country hams now come from a handful of federally inspected facilities that mimic the old technique under fluorescent lights. Everyone says it's not the same. Number 19. The Family Smokehouse. First pattern break. Here is where the story gets uncomfortable. A smokehouse was the single most important building on any mountain farm. Smaller than a tool shed, built of chestnut logs with a dirt floor and a slow hickory fire smoldering in a pit at the center. It preserved a year's worth of pork using nothing but smoke, salt, and thyme. Bacon hung from the rafters for 3 months. Sausages cured for 6 months. Ham sometimes hung for 2 years. The smoke contained natural phenols that prevented bacterial growth. The salt drew out moisture. The cool mountain air did the rest. A family of 7 could put up 600 pounds of preserved meat every November. Modern food safety law treats this entire technique as a public health crisis. The smokehouse violates roughly 14 separate provisions of the Food and Drug Administration Food Code, including unsealed floors, lack of pest control, no temperature monitoring, no documented kill step for Titanella, and no hack plan. A man in eastern Tennessee was investigated by federal agents in 2018 for selling smokehouse bacon at a farmer's market. The book was made the way his family had made it since 1879. He paid a fine of $4,000 and tore the smokehouse down. His grandchildren will not learn what he knew. Number 18. Sassafras Root Tea. On the first warm Saturday of spring, mountain children dug sassafras roots from the woods, scraped the bark, and brought it home in their pockets. Mama boiled the bark into a tea the color of weak rose, sweetened with honey, and served it as a spring tonic that supposedly cleaned the blood after a winter of heavy food. Generations of Appalachian families drank gallons of it. In 1976, the Food and Drug Administration banned saffel, the active aromatic compound in sassafras, after a single study showed it caused liver tumors in rats fed massive doses. The ban was bulked on a quantity equivalent to a human drinking 80 cups a day for 10 years. Selling sassafras tea, sassafras root, or anything containing saffel became a violation of federal law. Real root beer, which was originally flavored with sassafras, switched to artificial flavoring overnight. Today, you can still dig sassafras for personal use in most states. You cannot sell the tea. The 1976 study has been criticized by toxicologists for the past 30 years. The ban remains. Number 17. Poke salad. Pokeweed grows wild in every fence row from Pennsylvania to Texas. It is also poisonous if you do not know what you are doing. Mountain women perfected the technique 300 years ago. You picked only the youngest spring shoots, no taller than your hand. You boiled them once, drained the water, boiled them again, drained that water, then boiled them a third time. The triple boil leached out the toxic phytolactoxin and left behind tender greens that tasted like spinach crossed with asparagus. Served with a fried egg and a slice of fatback, poke salad was a free spring meal that fed mountain families for centuries. Today, selling pokeweed for human consumption is illegal in every state in America. Restaurants are prohibited from serving it. The FDA classifies it as a naturally occurring toxin. The technique still works perfectly when done right, but the knowledge is dying with the people who learned it from their grandmothers. A canning company in Arkansas called Allen Canning produced canned poke salad until 2000, then shut the line down because of liability concerns. There is no legal commercial source anymore. Number 16. Squirrel brain gravy. Some traditions have to end, and this is one of them. Mountain hunters cracked open the skulls of fresh-killed squirrels, scooped out the brains, and added them to milk gravy to be served over biscuits. 1405 it was a delicacy in Kentucky and West Virginia until the late 1990s. Then, doctors at the University of Kentucky identified a cluster of variant Creutzfeldt Jakob disease cases in patients who had eaten squirrel brains. The neurological disease similar to mad cow disease is 100% fatal. Squirrel brain consumption is now strongly discouraged by every state health department in the South, and selling squirrel meat with the head intact is illegal in most jurisdictions. The dish appears in 19th century mountain cookbooks as a treat. It appears in 21st century medical journals as a public health warning. Of all the items on this list, this is the one event the old-timers admit might deserve to stay forgotten. Every April, mountain families took to the woods with shovels and burlap sacks to dig ramps. The wild leeks that grow in dense colonies on north-facing slopes from Quebec to Georgia. A good ramp patch could yield 50 pounds in an afternoon. Families ate them fried with eggs and bacon, pickled them in mason jars, and sold the surplus at roadside stands for 50 cents a pound. By the 2000s, restaurant demand drove ramp prices to $20 a pound, and the slow-growing plants started disappearing from public lands. Today, harvesting ramps is illegal in Quebec, restricted to a permit system in West Virginia and Tennessee, and completely banned in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, North Carolina. Enacted a no-tolerance policy in 2004. Selling foraged ramps without documented private land sourcing can result in fines up to $5,000 in some Appalachian counties. The dish that mountain children grew up calling ramps and turs is now a regulated commodity. The forests where they grew freely are now patrolled. Number 14. Backyard hog slaughter for the community. This is the one that will get you a federal charge in 2026. The hog killing was a community event from October through December across the entire Mountain South. 6 or 8 families would gather at one farm, kill 2 or 3 hogs in a single morning, scald them in a wooden trough, scrape the bristles, hang them from a tripod, and butcher them by supper time. Every family went home with hams, shoulders, fat back, sausage, and a jar of cracklins. Nobody paid anybody. Labor was the currency. Today, This is a federal felony if any of that meat crosses the original property line. The Federal Meat Inspection Act of 1906, expanded by the Wholesome Meat Act of 1967, prohibits the sale, barter, or transfer of uninspected meat. Sharing a country ham with your sister-in-law, who lives a mile away, is technically a federal violation. Most prosecutors do not pursue family hog kills, but commercial cases involving uninspected mountain pork have resulted in fines exceeding $20,000 and federal probation. The community hog killing, the social fabric of Mountain November for 2 centuries, has been quietly criminalized. Number 13. Open fire cane syrup boiling. On October Saturdays in the lower Appalachian, families harvested sorghum cane, fed the stalks through a horse-drawn press, and boiled the green juice over an outdoor fire in a long copper evaporator pond for 10 hours until it darkened into the rich amber syrup that defined Southern breakfast for 200 years. A gallon of cane syrup sold for $2 in 1958. Today, the FDA Food Code prohibits open fire syrup making for any commercial sale because the boiling temperature is not documented. The cooking surface is exposed to airborne contaminants, and the operation cannot be HACCP certified outdoors. Several heritage syrup festivals in Mississippi and Alabama have been shut down by health inspectors in the past decade. Commercial sorghum syrup now comes from steam-jacketed kettles in food-grade facilities. The flavor of slow-boiled smoke-kissed cane syrup is gone from store shelves. A handful of families still make it the old way for their own use. They cannot legally give a jar to a neighbor. Number 12. Stone crock kraut at room temperature. Second pattern break. This is where modern food safety dogma collides with 500 years of fermentation science. A traditional Appalachian sauerkraut crock held 20 pounds of shredded cabbage, salt-packed, weighted with a clean river stone, and left to ferment in the kitchen at 65 to 72 for 6 weeks. The lacto-fermentation produced an environment so acidic that no harmful bacteria could survive. Mountain families ate this kraut all winter without a single recorded case of food poisoning. Modern state cottage food laws prohibit the sale of any fermented vegetable that is not processed in a refrigerated environment with documented pH testing below 4.6. Selling traditional crock kraut at a farmer's market is illegal in 38 states without a commercial cannery license. The irony is brutal. Properly fermented kraut is one of the safest foods on earth. The lactic acid environment is hostile to Listeria, Salmonella, and E. coli. The bureaucracy that regulates it does not trust grandmother's stone weight. The science says her kraut was safer than the bagged version at Walmart. Number 11. Bear fat for biscuits. Mountain hunters rendered bear fat for cooking through the 1960s. A single black bear could yield 20 to 30 pounds of pure white fat. And biscuit makers across Appalachia considered it superior to lard for one specific reason. It had a lower melting point, and that produced flockier, more tender biscuits. A widow in Mitchell County, North Carolina, was famous for her bear fat biscuits at every funeral and homecoming from 1947 to 1981. Today, bear hunting is regulated in every state, but the real obstacle is the sale of bear products. The Lacey Act and various state wildlife codes prohibit the commercial sale of bear meat or rendered bear fat across most of the United States. A bakery cannot use it. A restaurant cannot serve it. A grandmother cannot legally sell her bear fat biscuits at the church bake sale. Hunters who legally take a bear can use the fat themselves, but the moment money changes hands, the law engages. The biscuit that defined a region is now a private tradition only. Number 10. Wild mushroom selling. Morels, chanterelles, chicken of the woods, hen of the woods, mountain foragers had filled roadside baskets with wild mushrooms every spring and fall for as long as anyone remembered. A pound of fresh morels in 1972 sold for $2 at a Tennessee gas station. Today, selling wild foraged mushrooms commercially is illegal in most states without a state-issued mycologist certification. The Certified Forager program in Pennsylvania requires a 15-hour training course, a written exam, and an annual renewal fee. Restaurants are prohibited from buying uncertified wild mushrooms in roughly 40 states. The reasoning is real. Misidentified mushrooms kill people every year. But the law eliminated an entire informal economy that put grocery money in the pockets of mountain families during slow seasons. A man in West Virginia sold Morel's to a Charleston restaurant for 30 years. In 2019, the restaurant lost its license for buying from him. He stopped picking. The patches he tended still come up every April. Nobody collects them anymore. Mountain pragmatism never let good meat go to waste. A fresh killed deer on the side of Highway 19 was dinner for a week. State laws have changed dramatically on this one in the past 2 decades. As of 2026, 28 states have legalized roadkill salvage with a permit. 20 to still prohibit it entirely. The catch is that even in the legal states, the meat cannot be sold, served at any commercial establishment, or transported across state lines. The old mountain practice of dressing a roadkill deer and sharing the meat with 3 neighbors is technically illegal everywhere because it constitutes uninspected meat distribution under federal law. A church in Logan County, West Virginia, used to host a venison stew supper every January made entirely from donated roadkill. The state shut it down in 2008. The supper had been running since 1962. Number 8. Snapping Turtle Harvest. Snapping turtle stew was a delicacy in the lower Appalachians and the Ozarks for 2 centuries. A single 20-pound snapper could feed a family of 10 with meat that mountain cooks said tasted like 7 different animals depending on which part of the turtle you were eating. Today, commercial harvest of snapping turtles is banned in 17 states and tightly regulated in most others due to the species' slow reproductive rate and the bioaccumulation of mercury and PCBs in older turtles. Selling snapping turtle meat across state lines is restricted under the Lacey Act. Several states have pulled it off restaurant menus entirely. The turtle stew that fed Civil War soldiers, Depression-era families, and Sunday dinner tables in eastern Kentucky for generations is now a regulated wildlife product. The handful of legal commercial harvesters left are aging out of the trade. Number 7. Moonshine Vanilla Extract. Real vanilla extract requires alcohol, specifically ethanol, at a minimum of 35% to extract flavor compounds from vanilla beans. Mountain bakers solved this by using the cleanest moonshine they could get from a trusted neighbor, splitting a quart of high-proof corn liquor with a handful of vanilla beans, and aging it in a dark cabinet for 3 months. The result was vanilla extract that put store-bought to shame. The technique was completely illegal under federal alcohol law from the moment Prohibition ended in 1933. Possessing untaxed distilled spirits is a federal offense regardless of the use. The IRS has on several documented occasions prosecuted people for using moonshine in vanilla extract and other home flavorings. A grandmother in Wills County, North Carolina, was visited by federal agents in 1991 over a quart of vanilla extract she had given to a church bake sale. The case was eventually dropped. The agents took the vanilla. Number 6. Possum and sweet potatoes. Roasted possum with sweet potatoes was a Christmas dish across the rural South from 1830 to about 1965. Mountain families trapped possums alive, fed them clean corn and sweet milk for 2 weeks to purify them, then roasted the whole animal in a Dutch oven over coals with sweet potatoes nestled around it. Possum is legal to hunt in most states. Selling possum meat is prohibited. The USDA does not inspect opossums, which means commercial sale is prohibited under federal meat law. Several southern restaurants tried to put possum back on the menu in the 2010s as a heritage food revival. None succeeded. The supply chain does not exist because the inspection regime does not exist. A few states have considered creating a separate inspection category for traditional game meats. Nothing has passed. The dish that anchored 1,000 Christmas dinners has been quietly delisted from American cuisine by regulatory absence. Number 5. Pawpaw harvest from public land. Third pattern break. Here's where the law turns absurd. The pawpaw is North America's largest native fruit. A soft, custardy, Mango, banana-flavored treasure that grows wild in the Appalachian River bottoms and ripens for 2 short weeks in September. Mountain families harvested wild pawpaws for free for 3 centuries. Today, harvesting pawpaws on most federal lands, including national forests, is restricted to personal use only, and any commercial sale of fruit picked on public land is a federal violation. Pawpaws do not ship well. The fruit is too delicate for commercial distribution, which means you cannot easily buy them in stores, even though they grow wild across 26 states. The result is a fruit that millions of Americans have never tasted, even though it is growing in the woods behind their houses. A small farm in Ohio that legally grows cultivated pawpaws sells frozen pulp online for $50 a pound. Mountain children used to eat them for free off the ground. The fruit did not change. The fence around it did. Number 4. Black walnut harvesting and selling. Every fall, mountain children gathered black walnuts, drove over the hulls in the driveway with the family pickup, dried the nuts on the porch, cracked them with a hammer, and sold the meat by the cup at country stores for Christmas baking. A good walnut tree could put $20 in a kid's pocket in 1968. Real money. Today, selling unprocessed. Selling unprocessed.